Let's talk about the 5 things I quit to improve my life, and I won't leave you in suspense. They're all traits that we inherited from our silent generation parents. And feel free to join the discussion in the comments because I'd really love to hear your thoughts as we go along. If you're new here, hi, I'm Vicky. If you're like me, you've probably looked at your parents and said, there is no way I'm going to grow up to be like you, probably 100 times. And then we grew up and realized we were exactly like them. Growing up with parents from the silent generation, roughly born between 1927 and 1944, my husband and I realized that we glommed on to those traits like through osmosis and we wore them like a badge of courage. And as we aged, we realized just how detrimental some of those traits are. And we work really, really hard not to perpetuate them. I'm going to share 5 silent generation traits that I quit to improve my life. Number 1, I quit not asking for help. Members of the silent generation were raised in an era that valued self reliance and independence. And my father in law often talked about growing up in this era and doing without and just taking care of yourself because if you asked your neighbors, they were in the same boat and you were just being a burden on them. And my mother in law was raised with the same values. And then there was my mother, who was also born in this era, but she was also a sickly child. And so her childhood diseases, she shouldn't have done a lot of things that she did in life. So she also taught us self reliance and independence. So we would be able to persevere should we lose her at an early age. My husband and I, being raised by these people, we inherited those traits and we brought those traits into our marriage. And we found ourselves living like 2 independent people. We're just doing what we're going to do. We're not relying on each other. We're not helping each other. But we had an epiphany and we fixed that. And we learned how to work as a team. We learned how to extend and offer help as well as ask for help. Because in the beginning, I can honestly say that the only time I ever asked him for help was when I needed him to kill a bug. And for me, this trait also followed me into my career. You know, that saying, never let them see you sweat. Well, I took that to the extreme. It's like, never let them see that you didn't know something. So if I didn't know something or if I was unsure of something, I never let anybody see that. I worked my tail off to figure it out so that nobody would think I didn't know what I was doing or I didn't belong. And that brought upon a level of stress and anxiety that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I really had to learn later on in life just how detrimental self reliance and independence really can be on your life. And so once I did the work on myself and learned that, asking for help is not a sign of weakness and started asking for help and started reaching out, started delegating at work, the level of stress and anxiety just kind of washed off of me. And it was like a whole new world. Let me know in the comments, have you been in this situation and what did you do to overcome it? Because looking back, asking for help, it is not a weakness. It is the biggest sign of strength. Anyone who tells you that they know everything and can do everything, they're lying to you and to themselves. Number 2, I quit avoiding change. The silent generation also preferred stability and rigid routines. They did not accept change very, very much. And I've talked about this in some previous videos, my harsh truths videos to be exact, where my in laws just resisted everything there was about change. Change was not good. New technology was bad, old technology was better because that's what they were familiar with. And, I don't need a brand new TV. Who cares if the TV that I'm watching has no color, no sound, and has a line down the middle? I don't need a new refrigerator. Who cares the one that I have has no ceilings refrigerating the entire house? But that was the mentality that they were raised with. Change just was not good. For me personally, again, it goes back to my career. I found myself avoiding change as well because I stayed in a job that probably I should have left years ago, but it was familiar. I had seniority. I liked my staff. I liked the few friends that I made there. And so I stayed. But that just really caused a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and a lot of burnout. So I had been with that company for over 2 decades and I have been trained and I had been promoted. And I found myself in the last 6 years of that job no longer being what I trained and was promoted into. I was no longer a change agent. I now had become a person who just sat in 8 to 10 hours of meetings, arguing with people about doing the right thing. And it just ate me up inside. But again, I say because it was familiar. So when I was laid off at 55, I had two choices. I could stay and keep slowly dying inside because I did have friends who, once they heard that I was laid off, was trying to find positions for me to stay, or I could leave. And as you all know, I decided on the latter. So in choosing the latter, I was actually able to finally become the change leader that I was trained to be. Only this time I was the change leader of my own life. I was able to jump in and change the trajectory of my in-laws' health conditions. While we still lost my father-in-law, I honestly know that my being there and being able to direct his care helped him live the best time for the rest of his life. And I know right now my mother-in-law is living the best time right now because she hugs me and tells me so. And it's also giving me this opportunity to explore personal passions, looking at my creative side. Being in corporate America, I wasn't able to be creative a lot. I had to stuff that. I am a kid who I was into music. I was in orchestra. I was in jazz band. I was in marching band. I did all of those things. And then I went into corporate America and there's no more creativity anymore. You just do your job. So I'm really loving being able to now have the time and the freedom to change the trajectory of the rest of my life. So let me know in the comments, what changes have you been avoiding and what are you going to do about it now?
Number 3, I quit keeping the peace.
Members of the silent generation often sidestepped confrontation to keep the harmony. My husband and I like to joke the things that were wrong in our lives, we learned it from our parents. And what that was one of the things. We never talked about things that were bothering us and we would just stuff it. And we joke now that, yeah, we're just keeping quiet and hope to get a note to the outside, hoping somebody else would rescue us. And that is exactly what my in-laws did. They never talked about anything to themselves. They just stuffed it and kept to keep the peace. But they also didn't talk about it with anyone else. And so it's no wonder they both had hypertension. They never had a way to release that pressure valve. Earlier on in our marriage, we had the same problem. We weren't talking. And then one day, after years of building up and, not expressing our feelings, one day it just blew up. And we realized at that moment, this is not healthy. And we had to find ways to have that open, honest communication. And it's hard at times. You don't always want to tell someone something you don't like about them. But at the same time, you don't want to hold it in and stuff it so that one day you blow like Kilauea and you just blow up everything. So let me know in the comments, do you avoid conflict too? And have you found ways around it so that you can release your pressure valve?
Number 4, I quit blindly following authority.
So, another trait of the silent generation is their need to follow authority, whether it's right or wrong. And I think that also kind of plays into when you look back on that generation, all the wars that they were in. So, a lot of them were in the military, you follow orders. A lot of them had to ration to support the war, so you follow orders. And it kind of followed along into their adult life. So as I mentioned in this video, once my husband was able to get a hold of his parents' trust, the first thing he did was he pulled out the HIPAA authorization that granted access for doctors to speak to him about his parents' health condition. And he started going with them to doctor's appointments. And going to these doctor's appointments, it became evident really quickly that they had aligned themselves with quacks. The things that these doctors were saying to his parents and his parents were lapping it up really caused concern to him. And an example of this was the podiatrist. My mother-in-law was going to a podiatrist regularly to get her toenails cut. But this podiatrist was also selling her supplements that were aimed at improving the circulation in her feet. These were supplements that he made, and they were supplements that he sold out of his office. And they were like these big giant pills, and she'd come home with these big giant pills. And my husband, now that he's in the know, was trying to figure out why the heck is she taking these pills. And when he did his research on the ingredients in these pills, they're basically erectile dysfunction pills. The more he went to doctor's appointments, and other doctors and other specialists, he realized he had to do something a little bit more. So he actually exercised the medical power of attorney, which meant he's now making all the decisions and he fired them all. And he got them aligned with a new primary care physician that understood what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what's wrong with them instead of every single individual doctor selling him, their snake oil. The new doctor did all of the tests, all the x-rays, all the MRIs, sent them to specialists. He basically came back and said none of the stuff that they were taking the pills for were issues that they had. The issues that they had, no one was treating. So, having seen what happens when you blindly follow authority, my husband and I make sure that we are doing our research to understand what is happening. And if needed, get second and third opinions because we want to make sure we don't end up in the same boat as parents and just blindly following people. So, let me know in the comments, have you ever followed blindly with someone just because? And what did you do to stop it?
Number 5, I quit outdated traditions.
People of the silent generation place a lot of value on traditions. And my mother in law was a stickler for traditions. And I will use how she cooks. So she learned how to cook in the late 40s when there weren't a lot of modern conveniences out there. Plus, her family didn't have a lot of money. So they did a lot of things from scratch, a lot of canning, a lot of their own stuff. And that just carried on over the decades. And so by the time I came into the picture, she's making jam. And she's still making jam the same way that she knew how to make jam when she was a kid. And so because she made jam, store-bought jam, you don't do that. And yeah, I grew up with my mom and my grandma making jam as well, but by the time I grew up and moved out of the house, you can just buy that stuff off of the shelf. So that's exactly what I did. But my mother-in-law, in her mind, that's crap. You don't do it that way. And so she would rather bring her jam to my house than eat the store-bought jam. And over time, as I started to eat healthier, I learned about a thing called freezer jam. And so I started making that. It's low sugar, there's no preservatives, it's much better for you. It basically just tastes like fruit. But she wouldn't eat that either, even though I made it because it wasn't made the same way she makes hers. So let me know in the comments, do you have traditions that you can't let go of? The overarching reason why I quit these traits is because cognitive decline. I saw firsthand how cognitive decline, coupled with these deep seated beliefs and values in my in laws, put them in harm's way more times than I could count. And I'll give you an example. In 2000, my father in law told us a story about having to walk almost 2 miles on a busy California freeway looking for a call box. He just refused to buy a cell phone. No one needs that technology. But we gave them phones because it was for safety reasons. And fast forward to 2019, and we're hanging out at their house, and they nonchalantly tell us that they got lost coming home from the theater, a theater that they've had season tickets to for several decades. And instead of calling us and asking us for directions using that cell phone, they decided it would be a better idea to pull into a gas station at midnight, walk up to a stranger who was pumping his gas, give him their address, and have him give them directions to their home. So when we asked my father in law, why, he just basically said he didn't want to burden us. If my husband hadn't stolen that trust and exercised those powers of attorney, there is no telling what could have happened to the two of them if left to their own devices. Let me know in the comments. Have you discovered any traits you inherited from your parents that you've quit? So, knowing all of that, here's what I've done to safeguard myself should cognitive decline ever creep in and or these traits resurface. I have established my estate plan and I have clearly communicated with my co-trustees, my executors, and my healthcare proxies exactly what I want. Because today I have the mental and physical capability to know this and know that I am picking people that I trust that will step in, speak up for me, and take care of me exactly the way that I have outlined. Should something happen in the future where I no longer have the cognitive ability, they know exactly where my stuff is, and they can make sure that I'm safe, just like I'm doing for my in laws. Also, by doing this now and not knowing what tomorrow will bring, I have a current quality of life that is happy and simple because I know I have taken care of the what if plans so I can age on my terms. So, if you haven't made your what if plans to age on your terms, Check out my Estate Planning 101 playlist that walks you through all the documents that you need to have in place so that people can step in and take care of you when you can't take care of yourself. And if you've made it this far with me, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.